What is the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life that you couldn't explain? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe, and I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like and comment something related to the topic. Let's begin. Story 1. About 25 years ago, my now ex-wife and I were caretaking a house. We had been there for several weeks, and we both noticed that every time we came up the stairs from the cellar, we got that feeling that something was going to grab us as soon as we turned off the light. Everything else about the house seemed normal. We slept with an old analog wind-up alarm clock next to the bed, the kind that actually ticks. To set the alarm, you move a tiny third hand to the time you want, like halfway between 6 and 7 for 6:30. It's a very physical process, and it's almost impossible to set it wrong. We always had it set for 6 a.m., and we never messed with it. One night, the alarm went off at around 2 in the morning, loud, old-school ringing bells. My ex-wife and I both woke up absolutely terrified. I saw a small figure, maybe 2 feet tall, run out of the room. I thought I was losing my mind until my ex-wife screamed, "Did you just see that thing?" We both described it as some sort of small gremlin. When we looked at the alarm clock, the alarm hand had been moved from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. That's the whole story. It scared the hell out of me, and I still have no explanation for it. Nothing else ever happened there, but that creepy feeling in the cellar never went away. Story 2. When I was in college studying in the UK, I lived in a house with a group of other American students. The place supposedly had the ghost of a girl who had died there. I never believed any of it, but it was fun to play along. The kitchen had only one way in and out, and right after you entered, there was a padlocked door to the cellar where she was said to have lived. I was the only one with a key. Around Thanksgiving, we were all feeling homesick and decided to cook a big meal together. Because the kitchen was small and we only had limited appliances, we had to plan everything carefully. One girl who didn't have class the next day offered to stay up late and start the turkey. That evening, we went down to the cellar for the first and only time to grab some larger cooking tools. At 2:04 in the morning, I woke up to my door rattling, like someone was pushing against it. I figured it was one of my housemates who'd gotten the wrong room. About 30 seconds later, I heard a scratchy female voice softly saying hello every few seconds. My window was open, and it sounded like it was coming from outside, so I got up to close it, thinking it was just a drunk girl walking home from the pub. But when I looked out, there was no one there. Then I heard hello again, this time crystal clear, right behind me. My door rattled once more, and then everything went completely silent. I've had night terrors before, and I sometimes hallucinate when I have even a mild fever, so I told myself I must still be half asleep and went back to bed. The next morning at 7 a.m., the girl who was cooking said, "I had the creepiest night. Around 1:50, I heard footsteps coming up the cellar stairs, then the door rattled. At 2:10, it rattled again, and I heard footsteps going back down." She told me this before I'd said a word to anyone about what had happened to me. Story 3. I've seen some pretty wild things in my life, but most of them have an explanation. This one, though witnessed by my dad, my brother, and me, is still a mystery. It's technically 2 encounters, but I've always considered it one event. It was around 1998. My family had just moved into an old clapboard house on the edge of town. It had a huge backyard with a 6-foot wooden privacy fence on one side and a 4.5-foot chain-link fence around the other 3 sides. Our bedroom was a converted sunroom facing the backyard, with floor-to-ceiling windows along the entire back wall. My bed's headboard was against those windows, and my brother's bed was about 8 feet away, with his headboard against the opposite wall and the foot of his bed facing the windows. One night, we were lying in bed talking when my brother suddenly went quiet. I thought he'd fallen asleep, but then I heard him whispering in a shaky voice. "What?" I asked. He whispered again, too softly to hear. "Speak up. I can't hear you," I said. That's when he hissed, "Don't move. And be quiet." I thought he was messing with me and said, "Why?" But he was staring past me, toward the windows behind my head. I turned around, and there it was, a massive dog-like head, inches away from the glass, staring straight at me. I was practically nose-to-nose with it, just a single pane of glass and a few inches of air between us. I screamed, loud and long. Not my proudest moment, but I was only 10. The creature immediately ducked below the window, sprinted across the yard, and leapt clean over the chain-link fence before disappearing into the dark. My dad came running in with my mom right behind him. We tried to explain that something had been looking through our window. Dad grabbed his shotgun and went out into the yard, but found nothing. He wrote it off as a nightmare. My brother wouldn't admit to seeing anything, so I got blamed and told to stop making things up. About an hour later, still terrified, I begged to sleep in the living room but wasn't allowed. So there we were again, my brother and I huddled together in his bed, staring out those giant windows. Then we saw it again, walking along the fence on all fours. The fence only reached its mid-shoulder, so it was huge. It circled the yard, sniffing the ground, then effortlessly hopped over the fence and into our backyard. It walked right up to the window and pressed its face close, like it was trying to look inside. We were frozen in fear. My brother whispered, "Screw this," and as soon as he stepped off the bed, there was a deafening bang and a flash of light. The creature jerked sideways, then bolted across the yard, clearing the fence, the alleyway, and the neighbor's fence in a single bound, easily 15 or 20 feet, and vanished into the darkness. Dad came tearing around the house with his shotgun, slammed the side door shut behind him, and yelled that we had to leave. We packed up and went to a hotel that night. My mom refused to believe any of it, but my dad was shaken. He later said he fired at the thing from about 15 feet away, hitting it in the ribs with a 12-gauge slug, and it didn't even flinch. He said that when it stood up at the window, it wasn't on all fours anymore. It was crouched but still on its hind legs. He described it as looking like a really stocky man wearing a dog suit, except it clearly wasn't a suit. When it sniffed the ground earlier, he said it wasn't actually sniffing. It was pretending to, while staring straight at our window, like it was acting, testing if anyone was watching. We moved about 6 months later. My dad swore he'd never seen anything like it. This was in the coastal plains of Texas. No wolves, no large wild dogs, nothing that size. He told me years later that the moment he saw it under the streetlight, standing upright, he felt a wave of dread wash over him, like something terrible was about to happen. And he said that was the last time he ever doubted what we saw that night. Story 4. I worked in a nursing home for years on the night shift, and everyone always complained about weird things happening, especially strange noises coming from the top floor. I never believed any of it, so I was always the one who volunteered to go upstairs for night checks. One night, I was changing a resident on that floor with a colleague when he said he heard footsteps, like someone walking around. We were in the resident's room, and I needed to grab some bed sheets from the cupboard at the end of the corridor. As I walked back with the sheets, I kept hearing footsteps and what sounded like someone rustling or opening plastic bags. I was getting annoyed, thinking it was another staff member messing around, so I looked out into the hallway and saw a shadow pass by. The problem was, the shadow was huge, clearly shaped like a person walking, and it moved in sync with the sounds of footsteps and plastic bags. I completely froze. My heart was racing, and I couldn't make myself step out of the room. I ended up calling another coworker to come upstairs because I was too scared to leave. The strangest part is that I don't believe in ghosts or any of that stuff, and for 2 years, I had always done night checks alone on both floors without a single issue. But after that night, I never went upstairs by myself again, and I was always terrified to be up there. Story 5. When I was 9 years old, I was biking home one evening. We lived out in the countryside, up a small mountain. The road from the village had an uphill section, then a flat stretch, and then another uphill climb. The streetlights only went as far as the end of the flat section. I was a bit afraid of the dark, so I stopped right where the lights ended, at the bottom of that last hill, to gather my courage before riding the rest of the way home. It was a partial moon that night, so it wasn't completely dark. At the top of the hill, I saw a figure walking down toward me. I decided to wait until the person got closer, thinking I'd feel less afraid to ride in the dark if someone else was nearby. But about halfway down the hill, the person walked into the thin shadow of a tree across the road and never came out the other side. They just vanished. I stood there frozen, trying to understand what I had just seen, until panic set in. I turned my bike around and rode back down to the village, staying there until my parents came looking for me, wondering why I hadn't come home. They told me maybe the person had stepped into the woods or something like that, trying to calm me down. What they didn't tell me until much later, because they didn't want me to be too scared to bike home again, was that my father had seen the same thing before. He said he once saw her clearly while walking home from work, a woman walking down that same hill. He looked away for just a second, and when he looked back up, she was gone. There were no footprints in the fresh snow. Years later, I read a local legends book that mentioned how, for over a century, people had reported seeing a woman walking down that same hill and disappearing halfway down. My youngest daughter loves that story, so sometimes we go on ghost stakeouts. We buy pizzas and snacks, park at the bottom of the hill, play the Ghostbusters theme song, and wait to see if we can spot her. Story 6. This isn't my story, it's my uncle's. A bit of background. He used to work on the London Underground, doing maintenance on the tracks and tunnels. One day, he went into a tunnel with 2 colleagues. They had stopped to do some work when a man said to my uncle, "Hey, uncle's name. Can you show me the way out?" My uncle, assuming it was one of his co-workers, replied, "You know the way out," without even turning around at first because he was so focused on what he was doing. Then the man said, "I'm so cold." My uncle told me that the moment he heard that, he suddenly felt the temperature drop. It got freezing, and the air around him felt heavy and dead cold. When he finally turned around and shined his light, he saw the man standing there. But he wasn't one of his co-workers. He looked like what my uncle described as a ghost, a pale man holding an old, vintage-style lantern, dressed in a filthy, outdated railway uniform. My uncle said he just knew this man wasn't alive. The figure kept repeating, "I'm so cold. I'm so cold." My uncle tried to talk to him and said, "I don't think you're supposed to be here, mate. Can you see a light anywhere?" The man looked straight at him and said again, "Can you help me? I'm so cold." One of my uncle's colleagues, thinking it was someone playing a prank, started to walk over, but before he could reach him, the man vanished right in front of their eyes. They all freaked out and bolted out of the tunnel. After that, my uncle and his 2 co-workers refused to ever go down that section again. Other workers later claimed they'd seen the same man, always saying how cold he was. My uncle's retired now, but he still thinks about that man from time to time. Story 7. I've shared this story on Reddit before, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. It's not exactly a scary thing I saw, but it's something that still haunts me, and I can't stop wondering about it. My best friend and I used to talk all the time about the weird dreams we had. We were around 15 or 16, and we were really into conspiracies, aliens, the paranormal, lucid dreaming, stuff like that. One day, he told me about a dream where he got hit by a car and died. In the dream, he said he was riding a skateboard, wearing all black, when the car hit him. He said he could see everyone at his funeral. He even laughed and said his crush was there. He went on and on about how real it felt. It freaked me out at the time, but eventually, I forgot about it. A few years later, after I'd completely put that dream out of my mind, it actually happened. He died just before his 20th birthday. He was hit by a car while riding my skateboard, wearing all black, his work clothes. His crush was at the funeral. Every single detail he told me in that dream came true. I'm sure there were other details I've forgotten, but the ones I remember still send chills through me. I never told anyone about it because I didn't know what to make of it. I just kept replaying it in my head, wondering how or why he could have seen his own death so vividly years before it happened. Part of me thinks maybe it was just coincidence, but another part of me can't shake the feeling that it meant something, that somehow he knew. I don't know if it was fate, or some kind of warning, or proof that our souls really do go on after we die. I just wish I understood why he had that dream, and why he told me about it. If I hadn't lived through it, I wouldn't believe this story myself. Has anyone else ever experienced something like that? Story 8. When I was a kid, both of my parents left for work early in the morning, so they would drop me off at my grandmother's house for breakfast before school. She passed away during my junior year of high school, and after that, I started going straight home instead. Around that time, my mom began complaining that when she got home from work, the receiver on the phone by her bed, an old 1980s-style corded push-button phone, was always off the hook. She insisted I must have been using it, even though I wasn't. She said it was always properly hung up when she left in the morning. One day, I got home a little earlier than usual. To explain the setup, from the front door, you could see directly into the living room, dining room, the kitchen doorway, and a short hallway that led to my parents' bedroom and mine. There were no other doors. The windows were narrow old-style casement windows with screens, and we lived on the 3rd floor, so no one could have just come in. Anyway, the second I walked through the door, I clearly heard 2 footsteps in my parents' bedroom. I dropped my school bag and ran straight there, probably not the smartest move, but when I got inside, the room was empty. Then I noticed the phone receiver was on the floor, stretched out as far as the cord would allow. It looked like someone had gently placed it there, not like it had fallen. Later, I tried everything I could to replicate it, shaking the table, bumping the phone, even tipping it over. No matter what I did, the receiver would just fall next to the table or onto it, never in the same spot. The only way to get it there was to physically pull the cord tight, place it carefully, and hold it for a few seconds. It couldn't have ended up like that by accident. As soon as I hung it back up, the phone immediately rang. I picked it up. It was my dad. He sounded worried and asked what was wrong. I told him nothing and asked why he was asking. He said he'd called earlier, just before I got home, and someone had answered the phone but didn't say a word. He thought it was me, but after a while, he hung up and had been trying to call back ever since. I never figured out what happened that day. I know for a fact I heard footsteps, but there was nobody there. No one could have passed me. The windows were untouched, and the bedroom was too cluttered for anyone to hide in. After that, my mom never found the phone off the hook again. Story 9. Okay, so this isn't something I saw myself, but something I was told someone else saw, and it still gives me chills. Years ago, my ex-girlfriend passed away. Before she died, my brother and I were living together, and he had this big pit bull named Max. Max was an awesome dog, and my ex absolutely loved animals. She knew Max well and adored him. Eventually, I moved out, and my brother's girlfriend and her young daughter moved in with him. For context, my ex had long blonde hair, was in her 30s, and when she was buried, she was wearing a pink sweater. A few months after she passed, my brother and his family went on vacation and asked me to take care of Max while they were gone. Feed him, walk him, keep him company. Of course, I said yes. They usually kept him crated, and his crate was in the basement, in the daughter's room, which was pretty big. I spent time playing with Max, but eventually I had to leave, so I put him back in his crate. I felt bad about leaving him alone, so before I left, I looked up at the sky and said, "Meg, if you're still around, please keep Max company. He's going to be lonely." I didn't think much of it after that. My brother came back from his trip, and everything went back to normal. A few months later, I was chatting with his girlfriend about paranormal stuff, and she mentioned that she thought their house was haunted. I laughed and said, "No way. I've been there tons of times and never seen anything." She said it all started suddenly, nothing for months, and then strange things began happening. She hadn't seen anything herself, but her daughter, who was about 5 or 6 at the time, kept saying that whenever Max barked or got upset for no reason, she would see a lady about mommy's age with long blonde hair wearing a pink sweater who would calm the dog down. I just froze when she told me that. I hadn't told anyone what I said that night before leaving. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I invited my ex into their house. But honestly, I'm happy I did. If she really was there, at least she was keeping Max company. I just wish I could have seen her one more time. Story 10. I was about to cross the street when a woman suddenly put her arm across my chest and said, "Wait." I looked at her, confused, trying to figure out what was going on, and right then, a car crash happened. One of the cars went tumbling down the street, missing me by maybe 2 feet. If she hadn't stopped me, I would have been dead. But when I turned to thank her, she was gone, completely vanished. I could see for blocks in every direction, and there was nowhere she could have gone that fast without me seeing her. The only explanation I can come up with is that maybe my mind made up the memory of her because of how traumatic the crash was. But I've never experienced anything even remotely supernatural before or since. Story 11. I think I might have something for this. When I was about 10 years old, maybe a little younger, I was at a family wedding. It was late in the evening, the full moon was out, and it was starting to get dark. My cousin, who's a year younger than me, and I were outside, swinging on this big metal gate at the entrance of a huge open field next to the venue. While we were playing, we noticed a man way out in the field who seemed to be glowing. I mean literally, his skin, his clothes, everything was radiating this bright white light. We just stood there staring, trying to make sense of what we were seeing. We shouted at him to get his attention, and he stopped. Then, standing directly under the full moon, he turned toward us, pointed up at it, and just stared. We froze. He kept pointing for about 10 seconds, still looking right at us, and then calmly turned and kept walking. He disappeared behind a swing set, and that was it. We never saw him again. Even now, I have no idea what that was. I'd like to think it was just someone wearing a reflective outfit or something, but honestly, it didn't look like that at all. Story 12. My very first job was as a radio DJ at a small hometown station in the mid-1990s. The place was tiny, just a small building sitting in the middle of a field with a 500-foot antenna out back and a single road leading to the front door. The transmitter sat right behind my studio, separated by sound-dampening glass, and it always had a light bulb glowing inside. The station was so small you could see that light all the way from the driveway. There were only 2 doors, the front one, and a back door in the transmitter room that didn't even have an outside handle and was always locked from the inside. No one could enter through it. I worked the evening shift, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. After my shift, we went off the air for the night. I was always the last person there, so I'd stay a while to pull commercials for the morning show, wash dishes, and finish production work. After about a year, strange things started happening. Shadows darting at the edge of my vision, lights flickering on and off. One evening, just after I'd taken over the board, I looked up toward the front door and saw the perfect shadow of a man about 6 feet tall. It was there 1 second, gone the next. I mentioned it to my boss, not exactly the warmest person, and asked, "Have you ever felt like someone's here who isn't?" She sighed, called another employee into her office, and said, "He's seen Jimmy." Turns out everyone at the station had seen Jimmy, the original owner. According to them, he still dropped by from time to time. "He won't hurt you," my boss said. "He's just checking in on the place." From then on, Jimmy would make his presence known. My studio faced an unused one, and sometimes the lights there would flash a few times. I'd say, "Hi, Jimmy. Everything's fine," and it would stop. Once, he turned on a faucet. Another time, I heard him whisper my name in my ear. Freaky, but never threatening. But there was something else, something worse. Another presence, not like Jimmy at all. It didn't have a name, but it always gave me a horrible feeling. It was about shin-high and would dart around at the edge of my vision, leaving me frozen with dread whenever I felt it nearby. One night was worse than all the others. As soon as everyone left, I felt that thing. I turned on every light, cranked the music, and tried to ignore it. But the longer the night went on, the stronger the sense of dread became. Lights flickered all over the building. A dot matrix printer in the locked sales office suddenly started printing on its own, something that had never happened before. Then ceiling tiles began to shift upward, one by one, starting near my studio and moving down the hallway toward the front door. When they reached it, the locked front door opened. I went to shut it and relock it, and through the window, I saw a coffee cup and a cigar sitting on the front stoop, objects that hadn't been there before. As I turned to head back to the studio, I walked right into a strong cloud of cigar smoke, even though no one else was there. That was it for me. I cut the broadcast short, grabbed my keys, and bolted. From my car, I looked back through the glass front door and saw a dark figure standing inside, silhouetted against the transmitter's light. I floored it out of there. It's possible, I guess, that someone could have snuck in and played an elaborate prank on me, though I can't imagine how. The building was small and locked tight. Still, I have to leave that tiny possibility open. When I got home, I told my mom everything. She just said, "Shoo-wee, well, it's bedtime." So I went to my room, dialed up a BBS, this was the 90s, after all, and started typing up the story. Then the modem speaker, the one that only made noise while dialing, suddenly turned on mid-connection. Through the static of the data signal, I heard a distorted voice screech, "Help me." Then the speaker shut off. The connection stayed live. That sound is burned into my memory, that awful, drawn-out plea. There was no way my mom could have faked it. She wasn't even near the phone line, and even if she had picked up, it wouldn't have made that sound. I have never been able to explain it. It was the scariest night of my life. I'm a skeptic when it comes to ghosts or UFOs, but that night defied logic. Every once in a while, when I visit home, I stop by the old station. I still know a few people who work there. They say Jimmy's still around, still flashing the lights now and then. But the little one, the dark thing that terrified me, no one's seen it since. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.